I'm Dr. Andrew Burchet, Chief Technology and Innovation Officer for Leidos, your sponsors today. So on behalf of Leidos, I'd like to thank AUSA for convening this important hot topic forum on holistic health. It's been a great morning. Soon we're going to have a great afternoon as well. We want to sincerely thank all of you, soldiers, leaders, clinicians, researchers, and industry partners for the work you do every day to strengthen our military. At Leidos, we take our nation's toughest challenges in national security and health and apply advanced science and technology to make the world safer, healthier, and more efficient. That's why we're honored to serve as the premier sponsor of today's event, because we share a core belief with the Army that optimizing human performance is not optional, it is mission critical. When we invest in the whole person, the whole family, we enhance readiness, we improve decision-making, and help soldiers stay focused on the mission. All fortified by the discussions this morning. For more than 50 years, Leidos has partnered with the military community on readiness across the continuum of health, wellness, and performance, from modernizing the electronic health records, which you know as MHS Genesis, to delivering non-medical counseling globally through our military family life counseling program. We are also pushing the envelope to modernize individual medical readiness through the Reserve Health Readiness Program, or RHRP, by leveraging technology to improve the service members' readiness levels and become a more continuously ready environment. Our scientists, engineers, clinicians, and behavioral health professionals, one of whom you'll hear from this afternoon, bring together human performance research, advanced technology, data analytics, and on-the-ground care delivery to support total force, fitness, and resilience. Our work goes beyond broad benchmarks and standards. Leidos is helping leaders and care teams across the services see the full picture of soldier wellness and improve overall health, which is why the third panel today, focused on mental and sleep domains, is so important. We know that psychological health and sleep are deeply intertwined with physical performance, cognitive ability, agility, and long-term readiness. When we protect and optimize sleep and provide timely, stigma-free behavioral health support, we see fewer avoidable injuries, better responses by service members, when they're under stress, and a more resilient, ready force. I'm especially pleased to introduce my colleague, Dr. Keita Franklin, to your far left, for those in the audience. She's our Chief Behavioral Health Officer and is part of this discussion today. Dr. Franklin brings decades of experience in military and veteran behavioral health, suicide prevention, and force resilience, pairing clinical expertise with innovative solutions that truly meet soldiers and families where they are. At Leidos, we work alongside the Army to connect data, technology, and human expertise to demonstrate how behavioral health, operational stress control, sleep, and other domains impact performance, and why it's so critical to intervene early, effectively, and at scale. Thank you again for this opportunity to be a part of today's forum. I want to take this opportunity to introduce Colonel Tom Helms. Colonel Helms, Chaplain Helms, currently serves as the Commandant and Deputy Director of the U.S. Army Institute for Religious Leadership. He joined the Army Reserve in 1986, serving as a combat medic and combat engineer. In 1993, through OCS, he was commissioned as a military intelligence officer. He was commissioned as an Army chaplain in 1997. Stateside, he has served at the Pentagon, in Texas, North Carolina, and in California. His overseas assignments have included, among others, Command Chaplain, United States Army, Europe, and Africa. Also deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and most recently, Wiesbaden, Germany, in support of Task Force Dragon Security Assistance Group, Ukraine. He has a Doctor of Ministry from Wesley Theological Seminary and a BA and MA from Brigham Young University. Additionally, he has an MA in Public Policy and Management from the University of Pittsburgh with an emphasis in Ethics and Security Studies. Quite a history. He asked for a short introduction. That was not one, but turn over to Colonel Helms. Thank you.
Wow, we could sum that all up and say, there's an old guy up there. So it's been really fun, though, for these last 40 years in the military. Lots of change these last 40 years. If you recognized the panel right before lunch, we talked about nutrition. I don't know if anybody felt judged during lunch for what you were going to take. I want you to know that this panel, we're going to be talking about mental health and sleep. Okay, so maybe you might feel a little judged after lunch here today. For those of you gathered, you know, for most of our warfighter history, mental health and sleep were hidden domains, rarely talked about or misunderstood. But today, in a modern U.S. Army that focuses on holistic health and fitness, we recognize that small incremental improvements in our mental health and sleep domains can be powerful. Dr. James Clears, in his article on continuous improvement, highlights the incredible turnaround in the British cycling team. Here's the story. For the 20th century, the British cycling team had almost nothing to show for their efforts. I think they won one medal at the Olympics in those 100 years. They were truly one of the most underperforming teams on the planet. They were, in fact, so bad that people hesitated to give them equipment with their names on it. However, beginning in 2003, in the space of just 5 years, they went from a nobody team to the most dominant team in the world. How? They made small, incremental changes, often in the hidden side of life. They didn't just cycle more. They focused on a holistic approach to life that included a focus on the small things. In one example, they decided to hire a surgeon to come in and teach them how to properly stay away from disease, how to wash their hands, how to not get sick. In another example, they researched and selected pillows and mattresses that led to the best sleep for each individual writer. Pillows and mattresses, truly the hidden side of life, right? Those small incremental changes had a profound effect. In the 10 years from 2000 to 2017, they won 5 Tour de France events, 178 world championships, and 66 gold medals. Today, as we focus on mental health and sleep domains, may we likewise recognize the power of what has traditionally been the hidden side of life. We're grateful today to have some outstanding panelists. Dr. Kate Colvin. Kate, raise your hand. Currently serves as the H2F Integration Team Cognitive Performance Specialist Lead. Her expertise spans military special operations, professional athletics, and Fortune 500 leadership, establishing her as a leader in optimizing mental performance and enhancing psychological well-being. Dr. Colvin began her career as a mental performance specialist for the U.S. Army CSF2, now R2 program, before transitioning to the special operations community. She later served internationally as the lead tactical psychologist at NATO Special Operations Headquarters, where she guided allied nations in developing their own human performance initiatives. Mark Casper. Mark, please raise your hand. President and CEO of Tech for Troops, Mark Casper is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, technology professional, and nonprofit leader dedicated to bridging the digital divide for veterans and their families. Since 2015, he has served as president and CEO of Tech for Troops, guiding its mission and providing refurbished computers, IT training, and workforce development for underserved veterans nationwide. Under his leadership, Tech for Troops has expanded from a local initiative to a national force for digital empowerment. Finally, Keita Franklin. Raise your hand. She's at the end. Dr. Keita Franklin is an accomplished senior executive who's widely credited with revolutionizing several large-scale national public health systems. She's focused her expertise in key wellness areas to include suicide prevention, mental health, and substance abuse. She served as a senior executive both in the Department, the DoD and Department of Veteran Affairs, where she served as the principal advisor on all matters related to suicide prevention. As a national leader in the prevention of suicide, she was responsible for leading a multidisciplinary team of experts in the advancement of evidence-based prevention practices for over 3 million active duty members and 20 million veterans and their families. So quite an incredible panel. But we've also planted some people in the audience. So let me tell you who our plants are. We have 2 other subject matter experts today. If Spencer Posey and Ellie Van Loot, please stand. So Spencer Posey serves with Garmin Health, and Ellie Van Loot serves with the 11th Airborne Division, 1st Brigade at Fort Wainwright, Alaska. They will give us some ground truth today. Thank you very much. As we begin our questions, Do we have that sign that shows us how much time we have left right there? They're going to turn. Oh, when it's time. They're not until it's time when we see how much time we have left. Okay, I see. We're going to start off with technology first today, okay, and how technology impacts this field. Technology can both have a good and bad impact on your sleep, right? How can wearables help? Panel.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. We all have one of these, right? Smartphone. Nobody has a flip phone anymore. So you do get the blue screen, right? So wearables, I will, bring that to Kate here in just a second. But I'm going to tell you about the bad stuff that happens with these kinds of devices. And as well, I'm just going to warn you as a Marine, and I know there's some senior Army in here and all that. If you start falling asleep, you got to do sit-ups, and you got to do push-ups, and you got to run around the building twice. Just saying, okay? All right. So we've all heard of blue light, right? Everybody understands that? All right. What it does is it directly suppresses melatonin, which helps you get better sleep, and it delays direct sleep onset. So if you're on your phone right before you go to bed, that's a bad thing. Give yourself an hour. It also stimulates the brain, which what we just talked about, but keeps us in a state of high alertness, which is not what you need when you need to get your sleep. And yep, we can do it every once in a while, but don't make it a habit. It is not something that you want to have habit forming. And then since we are in a connectivity culture, the presence of the phone in the bedroom is a bad thing. I leave mine out on the kitchen countertop, and I don't worry about it because you know what? It's going to be there in the morning, and any emails that come in, any texts that come in, I can answer them in the morning. So those are the kinds of things that we need to be extremely aware of for our sleep, because I don't know about you, but the older I get, the more important sleep becomes. And that means going to bed earlier, but rising earlier, but I'm more refreshed and not having that blue screen of death. And it is really your brain death on top of you at all times. And that goes for adults and kids as well. And I'm going to throw it over to Kate for the wearables piece. There's a lot there. And if you don't know what a wearable is, it's a active personalized diagnostic and behavior change tool.
Thank you for that description. So really quickly before we dive into this, who has a wearable on right now? Probably like more than 50% of us. So what I think is so great about wearables, I'll just get this right here, is that wearables give us a number. They hold us accountable, right? They give us, whether you have a Whoop, whether you have an Oura Ring, whether you have a Garmin, whatever it is, it gives us a number to come back to, right? A baseline. I would like to share an example of a colleague of mine. When he goes TDY to a certain location on a certain trip, there's a group of them that gets together at a Mexican restaurant. He has a beer and he has a burrito. And just those two things, the next day, his readiness score on the Oura is greatly affected. So knowing, yeah, right? Like something as little as that. So when we talk about like the small incremental changes, being able to have the accountability, right? Day to day, and recognize what were the small incremental changes that maybe move me away from readiness, right? When we're really looking at cognitive readiness or energy demands, or what are the ones that move me towards being more ready? So I think wearables can be incredibly impactful there. I do want to actually throw this out to Spencer. So Spencer actually served as an infantry sergeant, and he was the H2F integrator for his unit. So I would love for him to give an example about how he's actually used wearables to really determine training times and how that's helped his performance.
Thanks. So something we did at the Old Guard, which is where I stood up H2F and started that culture there, is, and as you're talking about, wearables can provide individualized data, but at a large scale, they can provide an understanding of what the formation looks like. So when we put wearables on our first company, we immediately saw that the sleep of the leadership team was terrible. The commander and the first sergeant were sleeping on an average of 4.5 hours a night. And we saw that within the first week. So what we did immediately was we said, hey, we're going to push morning formations away from 6:30 to 8 a.m., allow folks to get a little more sleep. We empowered squad leaders to do PT once a day. So morale improved, sleep improved, cognitive decisions improved, and the leadership team of that company was a much happier leadership team. They were much more effective. They worked better together. So that's something you can do, not only from the individual level, but at the echelon level, different echelons. Thank you.
And what I love about wearables, with giving us that number, giving us that data, Lieutenant General Eifler mentioned humility goes a long way. I honestly think that that raw data, did you sleep well? Did you not? Where's your readiness score today? Your energy expenditure, did we have that recovery enough? I think that gives us a little bit of humility that really allows us to look at how do we enhance performance and what areas might that need to come from. I do want to also mention orthosomnia. I'm not sure if any of you have heard about that, but there are instances, and this is like few and far between, but there are times where wearables can cause anxiety, right? So I worked with for Special Forces Group. I was working with a company that was getting ready to deploy, and there was a team leader that would come in consistently and say, I'm going to perform like crap today because my readiness score is low. I didn't sleep good. This device tells me I'm not going to perform well. And literally his demeanor, his approach, right, his effort changed sheerly based off of a readiness score. So for him, we really had to interpret kind of like his approach and how he looked at that. But for some people, it does go to an extreme. I have a colleague who she was kind of comparing wearables. So a Whoop, she had the Garmin Band, the Garmin Watch, as well as the Aura. And I mean, there's so much variability we know between wearables. That's a whole different topic of discussion. But for her, it created this anxiety of, if I don't get 8 hours of sleep, then I'm not going to feel good tomorrow. And as soon as her head hit the pillow, that paralysis by analysis, right? For those of us that are very analytical, those quiet times are sometimes when our thoughts start to spin. And so hers were spinning around, not getting effective sleep, right? So that feedback caused orthosomnia, which therefore, wasn't very productive to her. So she's learned now one wearable is enough, and that, that isn't as anxiety provoking. The Army, I would be remiss not to mention the 2 studies that the Army is doing. So the 2023 NDAA wearables pilot, we're awaiting the final outcomes and anticipate receiving the deliverable by early December 2025. And then also the VCSA directed 101st wearables pilot. And this effort is in the planning phase, with the execution aligned for phase 2. And this will be the delivery within the H2FMS prototype solutions, and that's scheduled for April 2026. But this information that we're collecting from these 2 studies is really going to help us with the development of the H2FMS system and give us solutions as well as upgrades to the capabilities needs.
Well, that's great information. So now I am concerned about what's on my wrist, or if I do have something. What a great area for us to all study. Let's talk a little bit about culture now. The Army has a culture of pushing through, certainly, right? It does. How do we fundamentally shift this culture so that seeking help or prioritizing sleep is seen as a strength and a component of readiness rather than a sign of weakness?
An important one. Oh, is my mic on? Okay. It's such an important question and has so many layers. So when we think about culture, and I'm humbled by all that I don't know about the service members that are in uniform, particularly in this room, that are leading and managing culture and setting the tone in your units. So I offer some insights, but certainly make it work for you. The first thing that we think of when we think of sleep in particular is just increased awareness, which is why I appreciate the conversation about the wearables, because when people get a score and they're more aware, I know the soldiers are definitely of the mindset of I can take care of myself. And so hopefully when they get a score that's not in the good range, they take care of it. They get after it themselves. So awareness, education, but then also they do at times, I think, need tactical solutions. And so all that goes in with educating around good sleep hygiene. And sometimes it's the basics that we in this room likely know well, but young folks don't always. I have a 23 and a 27-year-old that I think are, many times good to go and know things that they don't know. And so I think the same applies for our troops, where you do have to teach them everything from the phone in the bedroom to the 1 hour to the good sleep hygiene. Should you have the TV? Go to sleep at the same time every night. They need these reminders when it comes to good sleep hygiene. And at Leidos, we're doing a study right now through the Office of Naval Research, also a wearable study, where we're looking at the Aura rings for a group of Navy sailors that are on a ship. And we're looking at a number of key indicators in that study. And initially, the thinking was, what is the intersection of sleep and safety mishaps when it comes to readiness? And that's a no-brainer, right? I see people nodding their head in the room, particularly leaders. But we don't want the sailors making workplace mistakes that can be deadly and hazardous. So it becomes a quick and easy sort of readiness issue. But I would tell you at the same time, from where I sat in suicide prevention over the years, we would see those that have, bear with me, but those that have ended their life by suicide as well, reporting problems with their sleep in the days leading up to their death by suicide. And when they're not sleeping, they're struggling not only with emotion regulation, like just trying to feel okay, but they're also struggling with coping and problem solving. And so we have that black and white thinking, not being able to operate in the gray, and making this awful sort of impulsive act around suicide. So having looked at the fatality data year over year, sleep is always there. And so I would offer that when we're doing good work to prevent these safety mishaps in the workplace that are important to us, we're likely doing good work to also save lives and to keep people emotionally regulated and in such a way that they can cope and problem solve fast and furious as you would want them to do in the fight every day at work. So we'll continue to watch that study that the Navy's doing. The results are still ongoing. We're super pleased to be involved in it and to be leading from the front with regard to that study. It's a small sample, only 84 sailors, but we think it will have incredibly meaningful results.
I also think that for shifting the culture change, I think that does need to come from the leadership, providing the opportunities for proper sleep, creating the normalization and the lack of stigma around the I'll sleep when I die. And one of my colleagues,
Sleep when I
Major Aaron Stone, with the whole like sleep is for the weak, sleep when I'll die. I have to quote her. She says that is old news and unimpressive. And that is so true, right? That I'll sleep when I die. I don't need to sleep. You adapt to sleep deprivation. We know from science literature that's been around for 40 plus years, mind you, that that is not true, right? And the more the research comes out, the more that it's doubling down that we really do need to create and establish these opportunities for proper sleep and proper recovery. And that is going to come from the leadership buying in, understanding, and creating those environments.
Thank you. Now let's talk about training. How should Army leaders and performance teams seamlessly integrate the often overlooked mental and sleep readiness domains into standard training and operational cycles?
And I'm actually going to throw it to our program director from Fort Wayne, right, Ellie. So she has an entire H2F system that she leads. And so I'd love for her to talk about some examples.
Yeah, good afternoon. So I think the key to the answer to this question really is acknowledging that leaders and units don't have extra time to give towards what we're trying to do, right? And so what we have to do is make it relevant and make it fit into what they're already doing. And you can do that without adding anything. You can actually just build a system around it, especially if it solves a problem for your boss. So I'm just going to give an example of something we were able to do. So Fort Wainwright, especially in the winter, very cold, very dark. And a lot of training has to happen inside in gyms. And we're never going to have enough gym space, right? I'll always ask for more gyms. So my commander and sergeant major brought us that. And we're like, what could we do about this? We went through a lot of ideas. At the same time, my team members and I are like, well, this is a pretty good opportunity to try to push offset PT, which is a hot topic, right? But what we saw was we found a company willing to take this on. What happens if we move the call to 0800 and train around, this company chose around 1300. What we saw and my commander saw as a solution to gym space, my team saw as a way to improve a whole lot of other things, right? And what we actually did was we took some data to try to inform the other leaders just in our unit of what happens when you do this. So what we saw was improvements in ACFT scores. Before, only 7% of that company was eating food before training. That bumped up to 70%. We all can acknowledge if you eat before training, you're going to be fueled better and perform better, right? At the beginning, so those soldiers were reporting that they were more connected to their squad than their family, which was interesting. At the end, those were both equal and both had increased. Especially us being in Alaska, a lot of soldiers reported being able to call family in the morning. They were home with their kids a little bit later in the day. And it was just basically a free morale boost for that company. After that, we presented this to our brigade, and many other companies still are doing offset PT. And one key takeaway was that leaders learned how to schedule PT the same way they schedule a range. It's not rigid. It's not at 6:30. It can move based on the requirements for the day. So if they need to train at a different time, they're not just skipping PT if they had to start early. So consistency in training is going to always make fitter soldiers, right? And so we saw all these other benefits. So what my commander saw as a solution for gym space, we saw as an improvement in everything. And I didn't even explicitly speak on sleep improvements. Soldiers were sleeping for an hour and a half more a day, but that was only because they were sleeping in longer. If you give them time in the evening, they're not going to go to bed sooner, right? So that was an improvement in all 5 domains of H2F without us calling it a sleep initiative. So that's just one example, but that's how our team tries to approach making improvements in all the domains.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about mental health. We talked about small things in the British cycling team, right? How can small acts of gratitude have an outsized impact on mental health?
Yes, we were joking in our pre-panel prep that I said this was like the best question of the panel.
Ever.
Best question ever. In part, I just offer to everybody in this room to think back to a time whether you've had a single conversation over the course of your career with a single person that maybe lasted less than 1 minute and that like greatly impacted where you are today. Like you might not be where you are today had you not run into this one person one time that like got you straight and like you're, just incredible. The same applies for, I think, everyone. And so we should not underestimate the power of these small acts. Having sort of came up the system over the years in mental health, I know for a fact that we do great work when people get to mental health. They come in, we give them evidence-based practices, particularly in the military and the VA, both. Like it's incredible the level of quality mental health care that happens across both these federal agencies. But it's 50 minutes, 1 hour a week. And then they're sort of off, right, everywhere else. Imagine the idea of us being able to carry them throughout life with goodness, not just in a clinic setting for 50 minutes, 1 hour a week. So I just say small acts of kindness and gratitude. I've been down in the weeds on the literature on this recently for something that I'm pulling together. And I continue to be amazed on the power of making sure our troops feel like they belong. If you're a leader in the room today and you're worried about anybody in your unit or you're wondering who should I be worried about, just do a quick mental check on whether everyone feels like they belong. Like, do they feel like this is their unit and that they have a seat at that table and they know their role? And those that don't feel like they belong are marginalized, and that's your at-risk group. If you need a quick cheater's way of figuring out who's at risk, if they don't feel connected, they don't feel like they fit in, and they don't feel a sense of belongingness, those are our ones that we want to put our arms around and bring them close, bring them right into the center and give them a seat right next to you, because these small acts have just like incredible outsized impacts. And the crazy thing about it is it's like something available to all of us, like today when we leave this room. Like, and it's in the science and it's easy and it's free. That's my pitch about it.
And what's most amazing is that gratitude comes from within. And when I realize, we're Army and we're Marines, we're Navy, we're Air Force, we blow things up and kill things, right? That's our job. But at the same time, the men and women on both sides of you need you as leaders to step up and say, okay, I got your back. You messed up this time. Let's walk over, let's have a conversation, and then, oh, you're good now. All right, just want to make sure. And then there's a couple of other things, right? So Marine Corps, I got a buddy of mine who committed suicide a couple of years ago. Wasn't a good time, but I'm not at fault, but I didn't keep in touch the way I should have kept in touch. That little bit of gratitude, a little bit of reach out, a little bit of buddy check that I should have done, I didn't do because I was busy, family, work, those kinds of things. And I'm on Fort Lee all the time. We're always talking about suicide prevention because that's part of what Tech for Troops does. And it's the gaming portion that your men and women are self-isolating in their barracks, in their apartments, in their homes, whatever they're at. And then all of a sudden, you just watch them decline and you're not sure why, but it's sleep deprivation. And they might be drinking at the same time, right? It's not illegal to drink. They shouldn't be doing drugs. Just say that. But if you reach out just a little bit to say, hey, are you okay? I see something wrong here. I see something going on. And it happened to me in the Marine Corps. And one of my sergeants reached out and I was just in a bad spot. I was a heavy drinker. And I thought the world hated me. I hated the world. But at the same time, he helped me get through it, but just by pulling me aside and saying, hey, what's going on? Because this isn't you. And then I was able to talk through it with him. And then, not that I was suicidal, but I sure was on the wrong path. And every one of you out here and everyone who's listening has that opportunity to change somebody's life like that. It literally will take you seconds. And there's no skin off your nose to make it happen. None. Because you don't have to give them anything special. What you have to give them is your attention and your time. And that's not special because we all have attention. We all have time. Gratitude's fun though. Seriously. I get it every day.
And that's the right answer after Thanksgiving, right? So in the Army, a brigade HPT must support thousands. Given the disparity in the soldiers to support specialist ratio, what are some of the best practices for scalability that the Army must implement in order to ensure effective, high quality H2F support across the entire force? And I think this is going out to the audience.
All right, so I'm going to talk about what this looks like when a unit does have an H2F team, and Spencer's going to talk about when they don't, because we know not everyone has it yet. Really excited about how fast it's rolling out, but 2 different approaches, and it's not impossible if you don't have us. But if you do have an H2F team, if my team's fully staffed, which we haven't been yet, we'll have 22 people for 3,300 soldiers. It is not okay if I'm relying on all of those soldiers actually coming to see our providers one-on-one to have an impact, right? So what we do is we look at building systems so that soldiers, even if they don't know they've interacted with H2F or don't even know H2F's there, they're being impacted by it. The biggest thing we do, and this is what all H2F teams are doing at this point, we host local junior officer and NCO courses, 40-hour courses where basically the graduates learn a little bit about all 5 H2F domains so that they can go out and be leaders and use those skills. Those are the NCOs leading what we call Wolf Accelerated Recovery Program. So Profile PT out in their battalions. They're the ones leading daily PT. They hopefully know enough to start conversations about spiritual readiness and nutrition, or advise their soldiers just enough, or know when to send soldiers our way. We're in our brigade. We've had our course running for about 1.5 years, so we have 220 of these trained. So we can't find a company without at least 4 or 5. So we've built a relationship with them. So there's a lot of back and forth between those NCOs and junior officers. Another thing is just creating a triage system. And we do this by in-processing. So every soldier that comes to our brigade, we basically give them a red, amber, green in every domain, and keep track of those reds and encourage them to come see us one-on-one. But if someone's green, they can go and they can come back if they need us, but they're good to go. So our providers, our medical providers really have to prioritize their time because they could treat all day, but we can't have them spending their whole day on those one-on-one appointments. So picking and choosing how they're spending that, and then just really leveraging those extensions of us that we've built, and all of the HF teams are doing the same. Pass it to Spencer.
For non-resourced units, first and foremost, the HTRF Academy down at Fort Jackson is doing a great job with the integrator course. So, try and get your soldiers down to that. That's the first step, is getting the individual small leaders to understand what H2F is, because H2F is an Army system, but the application of it is incredibly individual. So it's teaching behaviors. And these NCOs that go to these courses come out of these courses and they can teach lifestyle modifications. So teaching soldiers how to think about themselves. Because if we think about H2F, to me, 4 of the pillars are incredibly individual, right? And not a lot of soldiers come into the Army knowing how to take care of themselves, knowing how to sleep, how to eat, how to move properly, how to prepare mentally and spiritually. So the NCOs being the background or the backbone of the Army can teach these things to these young soldiers. And I believe that the onus is on the Army to do that. So number one, it's integrators. Number 2 is senior leaders. So I was part of the H2F team that went out to Fort Leavenworth at the School for Command Prep to teach all incoming battalion brigade commanders about what H2F should look like. So I know that a lot of the brigade and battalion commanders know what it looks like. So it's having a senior leader that can champion this for you. And I had a great one. His name was Colonel Dave Rowland, and he allowed me to push forward. And even though we didn't have one, I was here at the Old Guard in DC. What I did was I looked around the installation and I did kind of an assessment. What do we have that falls into these categories. So I just started knocking on doors. Hey, will you come help? I went down to Fort Belvoir and asked some occupational therapists and physical therapists, hey, will you come up to Fort Mine and just see some of our soldiers? So it took a lot of humility, but I built a lot of relationships and I had that kind of support to do that. So really it's just stepping out. I know the Army hasn't given a step-by-step process for how to do this, but there's a lot of people that want to help. And if you have an executive champion and you have soldiers in your formation that care about this and are educated through our PME, it's the way you can get it done. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you. Another question. The one size fits all approach doesn't work for physical fitness. How can the Army move towards individualized mental and sleep prescriptions?
Do we have any football fans in here? Anybody like watching the Colts this year? Okay. So I'm usually not a Colts fan, but the owner, so Carly Irsay Gordon, right? So I've been like all about her. And what is really interesting is that, so she's one of the three owners, right? They're sisters that own the Colts. And she's the majority owner. And if you've ever watched a Colts game, she's the woman on the sidelines with the headset on. And a lot of people have asked, why is she on the sidelines? Why does she have a headset on? Why does she need to understand what plays are being called? But what she's actually doing is she's evaluating whether or not the plays that are being called by the coaches meet the capabilities of the players, right? So is this player able to execute this call with these defenders and like these environmental conditions, right? And if you notice, their record's pretty dang good this year. So they're not just looking at like, you have the expectations to meet my demands. And let's be honest, we expect our soldiers to do things above and beyond like what they tend to expect is their norm, right? Is their capabilities. We expect them to not just like perform, but to live above what basic human capabilities are. And so being able from that leadership standpoint to take whether it's self-report data, right? Like the Pittsburgh Sleep Questionnaire or a mindfulness questionnaire, whether it's taking that data or working directly with their CPS, their cognitive performance specialist, or higher level data, right? Taking the aura, the sleep scores, the readiness scores, and using that to really better inform our training times, better inform how we're approaching things, I think can really help shape things. Even looking at like policy adaptations, late starts on days. We talked about the H2FA course. We also have the TMRM, the Tactical Mobility and Recovery course. This is a really great one, right? Like that active recovery. You all are incredibly great at switching on, but you're really not good at switching off, right? So being able to teach you to do that and also create and foster the environments that allow you to do that, right? Mentally, physically, spiritually, just switch off and be is really critical. And some of these programs, these spaces like TMRM, I'm one of the facilitators for it. And we literally train the soldiers to be able to do this with their unit. So before PT, after PT, really integrating that idea of mindful movement and connecting with yourself. Also being able to inform, I did some work out with a unit at Fort Bragg, and they were taking a lot of this data and they actually took one squadron and started doing coffee naps. I've heard of them called nappuccinos a lot as well, right? So it's really ironic that the sleep and mental panel is right after lunch when we have the dip, right? Like I don't know, it's just ironic. And I feel like that's always when I'm on a panel is after lunch talking about this. But what they did at this unit is they took a squadron and they allowed them to have coffee naps. So they chugged 8 ounces of black coffee, no sugar, nothing else, right? No additives, 8 ounces of black coffee. Apparently espresso has cholesterol high. No, I don't know, I'm not a dietitian, but it was black coffee. Then they would lay down and they would either sleep for 30 minutes. They would lay down doing tactical breathing, deliberate breathing, whatever you want to call it, right? A mindful practice, just being present, being switched off in like a protected space. And what they found, they were going through and doing a shooting school class. And they found that the squadron that literally took that, it ended up being an hour, right? Like chugging the coffee, laying down, getting up. So they took an extra hour out of their day to not do anything. And do you think their scores were higher? They outshot the other squadron like by pretty significantly. So now that unit does coffee naps. It's protected and it's worked into that. So I think being able to look at the data and really like kind of structure our training protocol and how we're providing the HUF services in this system to our soldiers and like around the daylight, right? And even looking at shift work and how we're allowing soldiers to recover from that, right? Switching from days to nights. A fun fact with not fun actually, but recent research shows that if for individuals switching days to nights often, they actually have a 15-year less life expectancy. And also shift work has been added with the World Health Organization as a level 2 carcinogen. So it like literally carcinogen, it makes cancers, right? Like lack of sleep can cause cancer. It's like a big important thing. So yeah, just something to consider. I think taking all that data, whether it's the electronic data, whether it's self-report data, even knowing, gosh, I've worked with teams and, you know, I've had a team leader come in that was just really angry. And I'm like, sir, how was your sleep last night? Right? How are your stress levels? Like having those conversations as well. I don't need to see his sleep score, but like when you get to know the folks that you're working with, you can really make those incremental small adjustments. Sorry, I get excited about that one.
And you can't tell us you got excited, could you? I just want to come back to gratitude real quick. I listen to podcasts, most of you do. And one that I listen to quite frequently just gave me an idea that I need to start, but I think it would be good for all of us out there. When you get up in the morning, because I get up around 4 and get ready for my day, and I go to bed early. I go to bed by 9:30, right? So I'm getting my 6.5 to 7 hours sleep, depending, which seems to be good for me. But what I'm going to start doing, and what I think a lot of you should do as well, is when you get up in the morning, write down some blessings or some gratitude that you have. And this should go for your men and women as well. And the reason why what that's going to do is that's going to actually change the neural pathways in their brain for them to go from being negative, oh crap, I got to do this today, and whatever other expletives you want to use, to being, man, I got a beautiful wife, I got a phenomenal home, and I'm driving a freaking Maserati. Really? To, you know, that really helps. And it changes your brain. It literally flips a switch in there to make them less negative and more positive, which is what we need in your business, right? Your business, as I mentioned earlier. So I would go, I'm going to push it hard. And if anybody asks me, I'll keep saying the same thing, but gratitude is massive. And one of the things I always tell folks, I think I said it on our call the other day, is Veterans Day and Memorial Day, the civilians get it mixed up, right? Oh, thank you for your service on Memorial Day. Oh, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But on Veterans Day, and this goes for my dad was Army, Korea War vet. People bought him dinners all the time in Texas. Loved it, right? He'd wear his hat, get dinners. He loved it. But one thing that he did for them is that he shook their hands. That human touch makes your life better. It's not just a hey and walk away. It's human touch, because we all crave that. Every one of us in this room plus craves the human touch, and a handshake does it for, it should be all of us in the military, all of us military supporters does that. So if you're in a restaurant, you see an old man, old woman with a hat on, shake their hand. Just don't say thank you, shake their hand, and you will see a difference in their eyes.
Thank you. Now I have a new challenge whenever I go into a restaurant. So, and I will be that person soon. You can shake my hand. Okay. So, hey, we have some questions from the audience, and so we'll delve into these. Is there, so we've been talking about the power of sleep and how good it is. Is there any advantage to training with sleep deprivation? Can you build resistance or coping skills using sleep deprivation?
You're good.
We don't adapt to sleep deprivation. No. You don't get used to it. You don't adapt to it. Your brains don't ever get okay with it. So sleep deprivation, SEER school, it is necessary to experience the suck, right? Because when we experience the suck, when we experience, General Eifler said that he went a couple of days without sleeping and he felt drunk. How many of you have experienced that? Right? And so when we are in that state, that's when we maybe have to bring more cognitive training skills, right? Utilize more attentional cues or instructional cues, right? Different things to really get us focused on the right thing to act now. That's when we have to bring and up the ante, right? Of our arsenal, our H2F arsenal. And so sure, you need to experience it so you know how to build the toolkit to navigate it, right? And then also it doesn't catch us by surprise when it does happen. But the more you do it does not mean that you get more okay with it at all, right? So having your soldiers work incredibly long hours, like sleep fatigue, you're not helping them, right? It's not cute. It's not fun. Like do it once and then let's develop really effective strategies for mitigating the detriments that come along with sleep deprivation.
Could not have said it better. Yeah. The concern that we have over time is also the intersection of lack of sleep and it exacerbating mental health issues. And so if you have a pre-existing population that's struggling with depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress disorder, and then you put them under conditions of little to no sleep, you are asking for a recipe for disaster. These not only in the suicide lane, but coping with that by substance abuse. Could be energy drinks, could be alcohol, could be nicotine, but that sort of mixture does not create the outcomes that you're looking for in the context of readiness for today's soldiers.
I think for most of the panel, when we think about sleep so far and what we've talked about, we're thinking about, sleep, normal soldier life or whatever. But if we consider, here's a question, what strategies have you seen utilized to promote sleep out in the field? Any strategies?
What works, right?
Never served myself, so I'm just going to share some of the things our team is trying to do for that. One of the things we teach in our course are encouraging our NCOs to encourage their squad, platoon, company, anything to take tactical naps, right? So to look for opportunities for napping when they're out in the field and allow their soldiers to nap when they're not doing something. Another thing we've been able to advise on, because a lot of what I do and my team does is advising leaders. Again, so soldiers don't really know H2F had an influence on it. When I first got to Fort Wainwright, I noticed how early the call was for when we had E2B, right? Like soldiers were standing in the field so early and they didn't do their EPFA for hours. The expert physical fitness assessment. So they were waiting in a field to do a fitness test. Thank you. Good point. I'm again, never been a soldier. If I was doing a fitness test to the max, I'd want to be super hydrated and I'd want to be able to eat pretty close to doing that. Some quick sugars. I didn't see a porta potty anywhere, right? So those soldiers probably woke up at 3:30 in the morning, didn't drink any water because they knew they'd have to use the bathroom. Didn't have any food on them unless they did in their pockets, but nowhere to throw it out. And then had to go do like max fitness test, right? So the next year it came around, we just talked with our leaders and came up with a solution to stagger that a little bit more. Just think about how we were getting our soldiers out there a little bit more to promote all of the things, right? But what it comes down to is that we can see the big versions of that. We're trying to train our leaders to look for opportunities for that when they are out in the field. If there is downtime, like do we have to stage them as early as it just because it makes us feel better, right? And then when your soldier is napping or teaching down regulation, how can you get them to down regulate in like 5 to 10 minutes so they just pull their cap down and they can sleep? So those are a couple of strategies we use in our team.
That's good stuff.
I also have never served, but I have had the pleasure of working with this community for 15 years, and I've been in the field a lot. And what I can say is from my experience is that when I first started, there was a lot of pride in like staying up, right? And enduring the suck in the field, right? Like, oh, we're out for this whole week. It's going to be cold, miserable, but we're going to endure it. We're not sleeping. We anticipate we're not going to. So they went out with this expectation that we're just going to eat MREs. We're not going to sleep. It's going to suck and it's going to be cold, right? So I think really setting the environment up, and that goes from like the command level and also the individual level, right? Going back to sleep deprivation, look at expectation management. You're going to be in the field, so you can't do your regular sleep routine, right? You're not at home. You're not going to be able to take your lukewarm shower and like read at night with your like salt lamp nightlight, whatever, right? You don't have that. So what does your sleep routine in the field look like? And that's what Ellie was getting at, right? With the down regulation, being able to pull your sleep cap down. So a sleep routine might differ from each environment that you're in. And so the soldier being able to really kind of mitigate the environment there, but then also the unit being able to fuel properly, right? If you're going to be in those conditions. I know I've seen a lot of people don't drink water when it's cold, right? So reminding people to do that. Water's huge for cognitive function. A cot, right? Looking at, or do you actually have something to sleep on? Working in rest time. You will be surprised. I have never once in a field exercise ever seen anybody work in rest time, right? It's like, figure it out. There might be breaks in action, like figure it out, right? So I think really providing that protected space and then also reducing the stigma around it. And again, we said this again, like I'll sleep when I die. That's not the thing, right? So like changing the stigma around that, we know. And here's the thing, but every time we're training, you are training your default setting. You don't rise the occasion. You default to your highest level of training. So what do you want that to be? So your efficiency in the field as a commander, I'm going to want to fuel them properly. I'm going to want to rest them properly because I want every single round maybe on that range to be as accurate as possible to establish the proper neuroplasticity. So when they deploy and they're in high stress environments, they can execute without hesitation, right? So creating those spaces, working in the rest and recovery, honestly is going to enhance performance. And that's where you're going to see your return on investment, is really allowing your soldiers, your operators to recover.
And I'm just going to say, it's been a long time since I served, right? I was in 83, 87, a long time ago. But I'm just going to say, if you really want to make them more comfortable in the field, give them thicker whoobies. You got to be able to give them a thicker blanket, right? That's a joke, y'all. That's a joke.
The only other thing that I would add that's not already been said is, particularly for young troops that are trying to figure this out, I would have them do some trial and error and write down their plan. So this is what works for me, because we know it is so individualistic, just like everybody in this room. Like your own sleep schedule at home, let alone in the field, is individualistic. Like what I do is probably different than what you do. And I love the book on the screen for myself, the hardcover book, because I feel like it's the eye movement that will like knock me out quick. Any type of book, like I just need to read like 2 or 3 pages and I'm it. But that doesn't work for the next person. So I would have them like do trial and error and figure it out for them, and then write down their plan so that they at least like they're doing that like they do for all the other aspects of being a good soldier.
Thank you.
So just as an aviator,
Yes,
I'll tell you
yes.
that
Curious.
we've been working on this for a long time, right? Obviously, you want
Good pilots that had lots of sleep.
that are cognitively
Yes, sir.
all over it, right, when you're in the cockpit. But we also work in demanding environments. A lot of times you're flying at night, and you might switch to a day
Yeah.
cycle and whatever. So we've established certain control measures over time, even in the field, even in combat, because that doesn't change in combat, right? Your cognitive ability and in fact you're under more stress and other things that challenge. So this is a very challenging question. I've gotten this a lot over
Yeah.
time here. Is how do we enable our soldiers to sleep there? I like your idea because it is different for everybody. And it depends on what job you have, depends on where you are and what the conditions are. If it's 120 degrees, it's really tough to sleep in the afternoon if you're flying that night,
Yes.
etc. So this is and I don't have all the answers, right? And I've commanded at every level
Yep.
up to here, trying to figure how we do this better. And but it is individualized. Then we had soldiers over there, sucking on monster drinks to stay awake for a night mission,
Yeah.
and then they can't sleep when they get back. And
Yeah.
it's a
hard.
self-fulfilling thing. So this is a challenge the leadership of the Army has to take on. And sometimes you do have to embrace the suck. Sometimes the conditions, enemy gets a vote and you're going to do what you're required to do. But I think right now, one of the biggest things we can do is make sure leaders are making it a conscious effort
Mhm.
to look at this problem within their formations
Yep.
and where they are. It's all going to be different for every commander in every situation, whether you're at NTC, in combat, in training, or even in garrison. But I think leaders making this a conscious effort to address the issue will make it better. And then we're not rubber stamping it, right? We're all going to have to do the division run where we show up at 0-200. I don't know if we're ever going to get away from that, but the day in and day out things, I think that has to be part of leaders' decision-making cycles to have a positive effect on that. We're never going to solve all the challenges associated with it, but I think we can do way better.
Spot on.
Thank you. I believe we had somebody who wanted to ask a question using the mic. An audience member. There we go.
Hi, thanks so much for coming here and for being a part of the panel. I'm Carly Nelson. I'm a staff writer with Army Magazine and an AUSA employee. One one of the comments that Dr. Colvin mentioned that kind of piqued my interest was the importance of switching off. So my question related to that would be, what can soldiers do when their MOS or their unit culture is really more of a 24/7 type of operation? I'm asking this as a military spouse. My husband is in the Marine Corps and he's on the Marine Corps shooting team. They're constantly traveling. The norm is a lack of sleep. The norm is a lack of access to the chow hall. The norm is 12+ hour days on the range. And I would imagine there's a lot of soldiers and more combat type related MOSs that have something similar where it's never going to be the priority and it's not happening. So like, what can you do in that type of environment where even when you come home, you're still on 24/7? Thank you.
And the idea of being on 24/7 is really what it gets at, right? We are training these individuals to be ready, to be on, to be responsive, right? We're training that to be the default setting. But what we know is our energy expenditure is not matching the energy that we're recovering, right? And therefore, our performance is going to suffer when that happens. I've worked with operators. I've been with those units, Special Operations, Ranger Regiment, SOAR, NSW. Like I've been in those hard charging units that do have those 12-hour days, right? And that just is their norm. They are going to work in like sucky environments. And so for those, it's really looking for, honestly, the breaks in action, right? Even, bear with me, a 4-man stack getting ready to enter the house, the breacher is setting a charge. That 4-man stack can be doing diaphragmatic breathing to lower their heart rate, right? So that when they go into the house, so they see a threat, right? You're naturally going to have a heightened heart rate, but they had a lower baseline. If you have a lower baseline heart rate, right? When our heart rate's elevated, we're expending energy, right? So those breaks in action, and that's a very minute 20-second break in action, right? Depending on how long it takes. But these breaks in action can be when you sit down at your computer to start answering emails. These can be when you're going to reload your megs, right, on the range. These breaks in action can be on the plane, right? I was talking with the athletic trainer from the Nationals, and alcohol consumption is huge, right? Like on the plane, he mentioned getting off and there would be like alcohol bottles, right? Like that's not necessarily like using your downtime wisely, right? Alcohol, fun fact, if your alcohol levels are above 0 at all, it blunts your brain's ability to get into your restful sleep cycles. And then when you sober up, when your blood alcohol levels hit 0, alcohol is a depressant, right? So it's going to spike your sympathetic nervous system and wake you up. It can disturb sleep, right? So being able, and gosh, I was working with an aviator, right? We were doing a flight lead train up really late nights, and I was riding out with him, and we were going back to the flight line. And he's like, "Hey, Kate, can I stop by the shopette before they close?" And he came out with 2 bottles of gin. And I'm like, "What are you doing? Are you like, you having a party or what's happening?" And he's like, "No, I have to drink a half of a bottle every night to be able to fall asleep." So that was his down regulation, right? So honestly, starting from like that education, right? How does alcohol impair our sleep? It might have like an increased onset of sleep, but that's not quality sleep, right? You're literally hovering in that when you're on an airplane, you're like nodding out. Like that's kind of where you're at, right? Your sleep quality is going to be horrible. And so for those individuals, honestly, it is looking for those small ways that we can change, those minute breaks in action. I've had guys come in, like maybe you don't need to do it like a strong strength and conditioning session. I'm a yoga instructor. I've got Green Berets to like fight over who gets yoga mats, right? Because we had a limited amount of them because that was a protected space for them to literally switch off, right? So when I say switching off, that's not like mindful meditation, crisscross applesauce. It literally could just be internally, how do I feel, right? Like doing a body scan, doing deliberate, purposeful breathing to bring your heart rate down, looking at our thoughts, right? So cognitive and emotional stressors actually cause our heart rate to race quicker, and it's more difficult to bring down, right? So what are our thoughts going through our head? We're really looking at having effective thoughts, right? Are we setting ourselves up for success? Are we thinking about stressors back home, or are we able to be present, right? Thinking about a stressor at home when I'm loading my ammunition and my mags, that's elevated stress, right? I'm wasting and burning energy. So being able to really tune in, and that kind of is that individual level, right? Or looking at the team, when can we switch off? So yeah, I think that looking for the minute ways to find those breaks in action, and whether that switching off is drinking water, right? Fueling ourselves can be helpful as well.
Okay, we are at our time limit. As we conclude, we actually have a challenge for you as the audience. We hope that you have had an aha moment. That somehow something that's been said, something that's been shared has inspired you to change something, right? Truly, a soldier's life must be better because you were here today. Okay, so I hope you wrote down what you thought of, and that either you're going to be a better example, or you have a policy change or an idea change to make life better for a soldier tomorrow. Let's hear it for the panel. Let's give them a round of applause.